Welcome and happy Halloween! Today I will be guiding you through a tutorial on how to create a centerpiece floral arrangement for Halloween using this skeleton head. I believe I purchased this some years ago from Walmart. I'm pretty sure it's very easy to find something like this. I'll link something in the description for you for all of the materials. But the head is hollow. I believe it was a full skeleton, and we'd removed the top of the cranium bone in order to create a vase. And I also ended up using a little bit of floral putty on the inside just to make it completely watertight. And another thing I think you can use is probably silicone. That could be another option if you don't have access to floral putty. And we've tested it out, we've poured some water into it, and it is completely watertight now. So there are a few options to use inside in order to create a framework or grid for your flowers. Foam is quite popular, but it is considered not an eco-friendly product. It's not very biodegradable, and it is also toxic. So in the floral industry, people shy away from it unless absolutely necessary. There are other options as well, and perhaps if you can let me know in your comments if you'd like to see a more in-depth tutorial about the mechanics, these are called mechanics, used within floral arranging, I can certainly create a video for you. So today we're going to use trusted chicken wire, very accessible, easy to find in your local hardware store. And I would recommend wearing some gloves to shape this because it can get a little bit sharp. And I'm going to try and create almost a ball that's going to fit into the vase. It's a little bit fidgety, and I'm going to take my time with it to shape it. I might need to cut it down a little. I think it might just be just a tad bit too long, so just clip off. So first, try and form it into a ball or an oval. What can happen is that you can kind of hold it in place and place it inside, and it'll actually expand on you. Definitely wear gloves, okay? Because now I'm regretting. Just make sure all the sharp pieces around the edges are tucked in so that nobody gets hurt and so you don't get hurt while you're arranging your flowers. So I think that's actually good enough, and it seems to be nice and tight inside. If you feel that you need to secure it with tape, you could use this floral product. It's a special floral tape. It is also waterproof, can be found at Michael's or a floral supply store. As you can see, the head is tilted back, so I'm not going to fill it up with water as that would spill out. And the way that I display this head is, of course, I will have to set something up at the bottom to keep it nice and level like this so the water doesn't spill out. For now, I will just go ahead and use this to arrange the flowers dry. So I've reintroduced this Lazy Susan. You can get it at IKEA. It's very inexpensive, and it will be your best friend for floral design. It's very nice and easy to be able to rotate your floral arrangement and see it in all of its 360-degree glory. And now you can also take a look. This is how the chicken wire looks inside. You will need some secateurs or floral cutters. Again, I think you can get this at Michael's. And some flowers. I have some beautiful hydrangeas that have turned this bold burgundy purple color, a little bit of lime. And I purchased a few flowers for around $30 from a local grocery store. They had a pretty beautiful selection, and again, I went with the moody fall colors, so dark reds, burgundies, and purples, and a little bit of foliage. So this is called seeded eucalyptus, and I think what I'll do with it is create a framework of the leaves and foliage spilling out, and you can just follow along. It's nice to take a look at how you want to frame your arrangement. It's a very intuitive process. I don't think you need any kind of special design skills. Just have fun with it. It's intuitive because you take a look at the shape of the floral or foliage in this case. It has its own shape in which direction it wants to go, and that's the best way to arrange, is to kind of intuitively follow the curve and shape of that branch. First few pieces that you place in are going to create the overall shape of your arrangement. You will be creating a framework in the sense of the scale. So obviously if you want it larger and looser, you know, your stems need to be longer. If you want it a little bit more compact and tight, your stems are shorter and sort of pilled together with less space in between. To create the foliage crisscross on the sides first, like so. I'm gonna cut this one a little shorter just so there's symmetry on both sides. You definitely need patience with floral arranging. Perhaps just a little bit here. Looks like it has hair, very funky. I find that the hydrangeas are kind of cool because they have almost like this creepy brain-like effect, especially in this color and the texture and the shape of it. I'm going to pick, it's calling to go in there. So this one right here. Sometimes the foliage can be left, but most of the time florists prefer to remove the foliage. That way there isn't too much in the way of each other. They're not interfering, and you can have the ease of placing your flower. Now it's the decision of where. Cut this just a little bit shorter. Is it covering the eye? Just a little bit. Go around to play with it until you like where it is. I feel like I want it a little bit more on an angle. There we go. It's a good placement. This kind of is a really good large filler because you have your focal flowers like your roses and these beautiful chrysanthemums just right here. You want to place them in a sort of a center of attention. Your filler flowers and your foliage, they fill out the gaps and cover your chicken wire mechanics. So I think what I'll do is place some more hydrangeas around to kind of create almost like a base, and then put in these focal pretty flowers. Also, your focal flowers are usually a little bit more expensive, so you have less of them to use. This one has a very variegated color, a little bit of purples, burgundies, and it goes into these green limes. And again, it works really nicely with your green seeded eucalyptus foliage. Just remember, hydrangeas do love water, so you do need to keep your arrangement hydrated. So if you have, let's say, the next day, just check the water level hasn't gone down, because they do drink a lot. So that's where I'm at now. You can see there's a gap here, and what I'll do is probably place one more hydrangea, and it kind of overall will cover the majority of this. This is hydrangea paniculata, so it's a little bit different, that its lace cap is a little bit pointed. So just keep that shape in mind as well, because it might not quite fit. Like, for example, I thought, oh, maybe it'll fit well, but now that I'm looking at it, it might not work as well as the rounded caps. So I might have to rethink that, but I will try it. You never know. I feel like this one would have probably worked better in the front at this angle. So I might just take a look what happens if I do this. Yes. Reminds me of a Mexican Day of the Dead sugar skull. It's very popular with all of the flowers coming out of it. It looks a lot more festive and less macabre. And if you select more colorful flowers, if you are going for that kind of aesthetic, you know, you could have very vibrant oranges and yellows and fun and exciting colors, and that way you can completely change your aesthetic. With ours, it's a very black and white, moody, a little bit somber, elegant look, but some people really like their Halloween to be bright and happy, and all you need to do is just change up the colors. Also, another thing I should have mentioned, now that I think of it, is cut your stems as much as possible on an angle. This way it opens up the cuticle and it allows for the flower to drink up more water. This is actually the case for roses and for most flowers, but hydrangeas especially, because as I said, they are quite thirsty flowers. As you can see, just like that, I've covered up the majority of the mechanics, and now I think what I'll do is start to place the focal flowers. I'm very excited to use these chrysanthemums, so I feel like I'm gonna start with that. You want to clean up your leaves and your stems as much as possible, because what happens with them is within the water they can rot, and that means that your flowers will not last that long because the bacteria will spread. Another little trick that people use, they add a tiny drop of bleach into their water to keep it from spreading the bacteria. So there I have that pretty chrysanthemum. You can see as a focal flower, it really just stands out, and it's a nice backdrop for it. These are spray roses. They're not your typical roses. So they, on one stem, there are about 4 to 5 sometimes per stem. They're a little bit smaller scale. They're quite pretty. They're nice for small arrangements, I find. 45. Take off the little leaves. And there we have the front starting to take shape. It's very pretty. Always remember that centerpieces, if they're not placed along a wall or along the mantle, something that where you don't see the back. Your centerpiece has to be interesting at every angle and every direction. And so especially at a table, if you have people sitting on either side, it's very nice to create something of interest for everyone to look at. So your focal flowers have to be arranged, I say, fairly evenly. And it is nice to usually cluster together. So this combination of flowers looks very nice, and I might repeat that throughout. If you have a few loose petals like that, they're like guard petals, you can remove them. But naturally they will fall off themselves. Just a little bit too long there. I just place this one right here. And I'm seeing kind of a gap right here. And I'm thinking that might be a good idea to add another rose there. Certainly worth a try. Always cut your stems a little bit longer because you can always cut them shorter. So see how short this is? If I place it here, the water level will likely not meet the stem, and it does require water. So right here I have a gap. Length here makes sense. That way I'm not, throwing this out, and I can use it. So that's where I think this piece will go. Tuck it in here somewhere. Just like that. This one has 3 on it. It might be a little heavy. And if it is very heavy in terms of the volume, I will have to snip off some. What you can do is, if you have this situation where you have the really short ones and you can't use them, you can place these shorter roses with a tied ribbon or a name tag as a place setting for a guest on top of their charger plate or the table. It's just a very inviting, pretty way to welcome your guests. Still have a little bit of space, and I feel like that's actually a good opportunity to take your green foliage again, your leaves, and just plug in those little spots to completely conceal the mechanics. I like a cascading look personally myself. There's something very romantic about that with flowers. So I do like pieces that kind of fall down and frame the arrangement in a willow-like. I think that's the best way to describe it. Willow-like way. Willow tree-like way, that's it. Just tying the rose right in here, like that. Hydrangea also creates like a natural network, a grid, so it holds your flowers in. You can also use that as a bit of a little trick there. So you can actually see that there's a bit of a lacking of symmetry here, so I need to do something to balance this side. I have this pretty little bud right here. How pretty is that? around, and it will be complete. I'm just filling out the ends there to create, again, balance on either of the sides. I think we need just a little bit in the back. Let's see if I can salvage any of these pieces here. I'm quite content with this, I think, overall. Just do a little spin for you. If you found this video valuable for yourself, please kindly subscribe and like our channel. I will be sure, as a thank you, to continue making these videos, and hopefully you can follow me as I enrich our space with different crafts and projects and teach you a few things about home decor. Happy Halloween!